In 1998, Lego lost money for the first time in its history. For a company that had been building its empire one plastic brick at a time since 1949, that had survived the deaths of founders, oil crises, recessions, and the rise of video games, posting a loss felt like a seismic event, like discovering that gravity had briefly stopped working. But 1998 was only the beginning. By 2003, Lego was losing approximately $1 million every single day. The company was carrying debt it could not comfortably service. Its product lines had multiplied into incoherence. Its manufacturing costs were among the highest in the toy industry. It had expanded into theme parks, clothing, television, video games, retail stores, and jewelry, almost none of which was making money, while its core brick business was being slowly eaten by competition and consumer drift. Lego was 6 months from bankruptcy. What happened next is one of the most remarkable corporate turnarounds in modern business history. A company that had lost its way by trying to be everything to everyone rediscovered that its greatest asset was the thing it had always been, and rebuilt itself into one of the most valuable toy brands on earth, eventually becoming the largest toy company in the world by revenue, surpassing Mattel and Hasbro. This is the story of how Lego nearly died, what saved it, and what it reveals about the nature of brand identity, creative discipline, and the relationship between a company and its community. The Lego Group was founded in 1932 in Billund, Denmark by Ole Kirk Christensen, a carpenter who had been making wooden toys. The name Lego comes from the Danish words leg godt, play well. In 1949, Lego began producing interlocking plastic bricks based on a design it licensed and subsequently developed into its own system. The Lego system of play, formalized in 1958, established the design principles that the company's bricks still follow today: the specific dimensions, the specific clutch power, the specific material specifications that mean a brick made in 1958 is compatible with a brick made in 2024. This compatibility was not accidental or incidental. It was a deliberate and consequential design philosophy. By ensuring that every Lego element worked with every other Lego element across every set and every year of production, the company created a product that accumulated rather than obsoleted. A child's Lego collection grew over time without any piece becoming useless. The system rewarded continued purchase in a way that a toy requiring proprietary accessories or that became incompatible with new releases could not. The plastic brick itself was also an unusually elegant product. It was simple enough that children from a very early age could manipulate it. It was complex enough in its combination potential that adult enthusiasts found it absorbing. It was durable, it was safe, it was colorful. It inspired open-ended creative construction in a way that most toys, which prescribed a specific mode of play, did not. The crisis that accumulated through the late 1990s and early 2000s had multiple causes that were simultaneously external and self-inflicted. The external pressures were real. Video games were competing for children's time and attention in ways that passive toys could not directly counter. The Nintendo Entertainment System had arrived in American homes in 1985. By the mid-1990s, PlayStation and Nintendo 64 were generating entertainment experiences that construction toys struggled to compete with for older children. The demographic that had been Lego's core, children aged 6 to 12, was spending more time gaming and less time building. The competitive pressure in the toy market had also intensified. Mega Bloks, a Canadian company producing compatible construction bricks at lower price points, was growing its market share. Lego's premium pricing, justified by its manufacturing quality and brand, was under pressure from substitutes that were good enough for many consumers, even if they weren't quite as precise. But the external pressures were manageable. What was not manageable was the organizational response to those pressures. Lego's leadership, watching video games grow and toy store shelves fill with licensed entertainment merchandise, concluded that the company needed to diversify aggressively and innovate relentlessly. The diagnosis was understandable. The prescription was catastrophic. Through the late 1990s, Lego launched a series of expansions that individually seemed defensible, but collectively destroyed the company's focus and strained its finances beyond what the underlying brick business could support. Legoland theme parks. The first had opened in Billund in 1968, but three new parks were developed in the late 1990s in Windsor, Carlsbad, and Germany, each requiring capital investment of hundreds of millions of dollars at exactly the moment the core business was under stress. Lego Media, producing video games, television content, and film. Lego clothing and watches. Lego retail stores in high traffic, high rent locations. A line of jewelry for children called Clickets. Galador, an action figure line that departed so far from the brick system that it was essentially a different product category with the Lego name on it. The product line within the brick business also exploded in complexity. The number of unique Lego elements, the individual brick designs in different shapes, colors, and sizes, grew from roughly 6,000 in the mid-1990s to over 12,000 by the early 2000s. Each unique element required its own mold, its own manufacturing process, its own inventory management. The cost implications were severe, and the benefit to the play experience was questionable. More specialized pieces made set design easier in the short term, and manufacturing economics worse in both the short and long term. The organization that was making these decisions was growing, becoming more complex, and losing the operational discipline that had characterized the company in its earlier decades. Manufacturing costs at the Billund facility were high, and the complexity of the expanded element library made them higher. Supply chain management was strained by the variety of products being produced simultaneously. The company was, in the bluntest terms, spending more than it was making, on a trajectory that would exhaust its financial reserves. In 2004, Lego brought in Jørgen Vig Knudstorp as CEO, a former McKinsey consultant who had joined the company in 2001 and had spent 3 years studying its operations before being given the mandate to fix them. He was 35 years old. He was not a family member. He was the first outsider to lead the company in its history. The appointment itself was a signal that the Christiansen family understood the severity of what had happened and was willing to accept a diagnosis and prescription that the company's internal culture had not been able to generate on its own. Knudstorp's initial assessment was stark. He described the company as a burning platform, language that coincidentally Stephen Elop would use about Nokia several years later. The metaphor was apt. Lego needed to change fundamentally or cease to exist. The turnaround strategy Knudstorp executed had several interlocking components, each addressing a different dimension of the crisis. The most urgent was financial stabilization. Knudstorp negotiated a deal to sell the Legoland parks to the Blackstone Group in 2005, raising approximately 460 million euros that immediately relieved the most acute financial pressure. The parks were not sold because theme parks are inherently bad businesses. They can be good businesses. They were sold because they were not Lego's business. They required capital Lego did not have, and their presence on the balance sheet was threatening the core company's survival. Manufacturing was restructured, with significant production moved from the high-cost Billund facility to lower-cost facilities in the Czech Republic and Mexico, and outsourced to Flextronics, a contract manufacturer in some categories. The manufacturing restructuring was painful organizationally and required careful quality management to ensure that the precision that defined the Lego brick was maintained in the new facilities. It was also necessary. The cost structure that the Billund-centric manufacturing model produced was not compatible with the price points Lego needed to maintain market competitiveness. The element library was systematically reduced. The 12,000 unique elements were cut back substantially, eliminating pieces that appeared in only a handful of sets and contributed to manufacturing complexity without meaningfully improving the play experience. The reduction required discipline in set design, accepting that some visual effects achievable with specialized pieces would not be achievable with the reduced library. But it significantly improved manufacturing economics and pushed designers toward creative solutions within constraints. The strategic refocus that accompanied the operational restructuring was equally important, and it involved Knudstorp making a series of decisions that ran counter to the received wisdom about how toy companies needed to compete in the entertainment age. Rather than continuing to chase video games and entertainment properties with internally developed content, Lego leaned into licensing relationships with established entertainment franchises, starting with Star Wars in 1999, which had been one of the few late 1990s launches that had genuinely worked, and expanding to Harry Potter, Indiana Jones, Batman, and eventually an extraordinarily broad portfolio of licensed themes. The licensing strategy was also financially disciplined. Rather than investing the capital required to develop original intellectual property, which had produced expensive failures like Galador, Lego paid royalties for access to established franchises with existing fan bases and guaranteed demand. The economics were less attractive per unit sold than proprietary themes would have been, but the risk profile was dramatically better, and the marketing was largely done by the franchise owners. The reinvestment in original themes alongside the licensed portfolio maintained Lego's creative identity. Bionicle, a construction line with a deep original mythology, had been one of the few genuine successes of the late 1990s expansion period and continued as a significant revenue contributor. Lego Technic, the complex gear and mechanism line aimed at older builders, maintained its loyal audience. The classic city, creator, and architecture themes continued to serve the core Lego audience. The adult fan community, known as AFOLs, adult fans of Lego, became a strategic asset that Knudstorp's team recognized and deliberately cultivated in a way that previous leadership had not. Adult Lego enthusiasts had existed for decades, largely self-organized in clubs and later in online communities where they shared their builds, discussed set releases, and developed techniques for advanced construction. For most of the company's history, Lego had not known quite what to make of these adults. The product was officially a children's toy, and adult enthusiasm was a demographic anomaly rather than a target market. The strategic reframe was to treat adult fans as both a market and an innovation resource. The LEGO Ideas platform, launched as LEGO Cuusoo in 2008 and rebranded in 2014, invited fans to submit original set designs, which were reviewed by LEGO's internal team, and if they reached a threshold of community support votes, considered for official production. Successful submissions became official LEGO sets, with the original designer receiving a royalty and credit. The Ideas platform accomplished multiple things simultaneously. It generated product ideas that LEGO's internal design team might not have produced, often reflecting the specific interests and aesthetic sensibilities of the adult fan community. It created a pipeline of community-validated concepts, sets that had already demonstrated enthusiasm before LEGO committed to production. It deepened the adult fan community's engagement with the brand, creating invested participants rather than passive consumers. And it generated media coverage that treated Lego as a creative platform rather than a children's toy. The Lego Movie, released in February 2014, was the moment that crystallized how completely the brand had been rebuilt. The film was produced by Warner Bros. Animation with Lego's involvement, and it did something that most toy-based entertainment properties had failed to do. It was genuinely, substantively good. It was funny for adults, engaging for children, visually inventive in its use of the brick aesthetic, and contained a thematic depth about creativity, conformity, and the relationship between instructions and imagination that resonated with the adult fans who had sustained the brand through its difficult years as much as with the children who were its primary market. The film grossed approximately $469 million globally on a production budget of approximately $60 million. The merchandise tie-in sales were substantial. The cultural impact was significant. The Lego Movie restored Lego to a position of genuine cultural relevance and cool that the brand had not occupied for years. Critically, the film's themes were perfectly aligned with what Lego had rediscovered about itself during the turnaround. The tension in the movie between following the instructions and building something original reflected exactly the tension that Lego had navigated in rebuilding its product line, between the prescriptive, specialized sets of the crisis years and the open-ended, creative construction philosophy of the classic brick system. The movie was, without intending to be, a piece of self-aware brand communication. Sequels, spin-offs, and a continued presence in animation followed. The Lego Batman movie in 2017 and the Lego Ninjago movie in the same year extended the franchise, though neither matched the original's cultural impact. The movie franchise became part of a broader entertainment strategy that was more disciplined than the late 1990s media expansion, because it was built on an established franchise rather than speculative investment in unproven content. By 2014, Lego had become the largest toy company in the world by revenue, surpassing Mattel. The company that had been 6 months from bankruptcy a decade earlier was generating revenues of approximately 28 billion Danish kroner, roughly 4.5 billion US dollars, with profit margins that were exceptional for the toy industry. The subsequent years brought new challenges. Revenue dipped in 2017 for the first time since the turnaround, driven by weaker performance in mature markets and the continued pressure of digital entertainment on toy consumption. Lego responded with a restructuring, reducing its workforce by approximately 1,400 people and simplifying its organizational structure. That was painful but executed with the discipline the turnaround had established. The COVID-19 pandemic unexpectedly produced a significant boost for Lego. Families looking for activities during lockdowns and homeschooling periods turned to construction toys in large numbers. Lego's sales grew substantially in 2020 and 2021, with adult buyers in particular driving demand. The pandemic's forced domestic leisure created conditions where the meditative, focused engagement of a large Lego build had unusual appeal. By 2023, Lego's revenues exceeded 65 billion Danish kroner, approximately 9.5 billion US dollars, making it not just the largest toy company in the world, but one of the most profitable consumer brands in any category, with operating profit margins that most consumer goods companies would envy. What does the Lego turnaround ultimately tell us? It tells us that brand identity is an asset that can be squandered by expansion as surely as by neglect. Lego's late 1990s diversification did not feel like abandoning the brand to the people making the decisions. It felt like protecting the brand by ensuring it remained relevant in a changing entertainment landscape. What it actually did was dilute the brand's meaning and strain the operational and financial foundation that made it possible. It tells us that simplification is a strategy, not a retreat. Knudstorp's most important decisions were about what to stop doing, what to sell, what to cut, what to eliminate from the element library, what to exit. In a business culture that equates growth with strategy, the discipline to simplify is undervalued and genuinely difficult to execute against organizational resistance. It tells us that communities are not audiences. The adult fan community that sustained Lego's cultural presence through its crisis years and that became a design resource and primary market through the turnaround was not an audience to be marketed to. It was a community of genuine enthusiasts whose knowledge and creativity had value that Lego learned, belatedly, to engage rather than ignore. And it tells us something about the relationship between constraints and creativity. The reduction of the element library, which looked like a limitation, forced better design. The discipline of building within a consistent system, rather than designing specialized pieces for every set, produced products that were more versatile, more recombinable, and ultimately more consistent with what the Lego brick had always been. The brick didn't change. The company learned, at considerable cost, to remember why that mattered.